Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 40 of Takeaways. My name is Patrick Searcy. I'm the Director of Marketing for ALN Apartment Data, and I'm joined by the actual star of the show here, Jordan Brooks, our Senior Market Analyst. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm great, Patrick. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving, which is next week as the time that we're recording this, and I'm sure that you're looking forward to just a little bit of downtime, and I'm more on that later, but yeah, for now, let's actually talk about the newsletter article from the November 2023 newsletter. It's called A Comparative Look at New Supply. Now, the article deals with a metric that you called years worth of supply. So before we really hop into the rest of this, tell us more about that metric and how you're using it in this article.
Sure. Well, we basically looked at the number of units currently under construction, which is a specific portion of the pipeline as ALN tracks new construction. So under construction projects are those that have already broken ground but are not yet leasing. And so those are units that, because they've already broken ground, we know they're going to be entering the market in the relatively near term, as opposed to projects that can still be postponed or canceled if they're still in a pre-construction phase. But also because they're not yet leasing, those units aren't yet affecting their markets. And so this kind of gives us a picture of, what's going to be happening in the near future for markets around the country. And so it's those under construction units that are typically of particular interest to us. And then the other piece is average annual net absorption. And we derived that from a 5-year average. You could have gone back a little bit further, could have done a 3-year as well instead of a 5-year. The thinking there was we wanted to at least capture a little bit of that pre-pandemic period because the last few years have been so high variance and unusual. We didn't want just that period to derive the average. So we took a 5-year period, got an annual average for net absorbed units, and then basically just took the under construction units, divide that by the absorption, and that returns a value which we called years worth of supply.
Well, I noticed that there were two markets on one of the charts with this metric that had a negative value. So what does that mean?
Right. So two markets have a negative years worth of supply, which those markets, Concord, New Hampshire, and Rapid City, South Dakota, basically those markets have a negative value for their average annual absorption over the last 5 years. And so because they do have some new supply coming in, you've got a positive number divided by a negative number. And so we get a negative value. And again, all that's really reflecting is that unfortunately those two markets and only those two have negative net absorption over the last handful of years.
Well, you mentioned in the article that a lot more could be said on the topic. So what's one major component that there just wasn't space for?
I think one component that jumps out is we really didn't have space to discuss sort of what proportion of markets around the country are above a certain threshold in terms of upcoming new supply. So the average construction duration right now nationally is about 19 or 20 months. So for these projects that have already broken ground, the vast majority of those we would anticipate being in the market within the next 2 years. And so that kind of gives us an idea of what the new supply is going to be at the market level over the next 2 years. And so then if you look at, again, sort of contextualizing around what is the average demand per year in these markets, markets above, say, a 3-year threshold are those in which, you've got 3 years worth of absorption coming in, presumably for the most part over the next 2 years. And so those are areas where we would expect a little bit more pressure on the other performance metrics, occupancy, rent growth, et cetera, from new supply. And so, again, we didn't really have time to dive into that in the newsletter, or didn't have space rather. But looking at that data, there's about 30% of markets around the country that meet that threshold of 3 years or more worth of supply in the under construction section of the pipeline. So that's not a huge number. I mean, that tells us that supply pressure and, risk of overbuild is not something that is currently a feature of a majority of markets around the country, certainly, but also 30% is not a tiny number either. I mean, it's more than a quarter of markets, almost a third of markets that we would expect to feel a little bit of pinch in the near term from this level of new supply.
So we kind of hinted at this at the beginning, but with Thanksgiving coming up, I'm sure there's a bit of a reprieve here. Tell us what's going on in your world for events and what might be happening on the blog.
Well, events, I am officially finished for 2023, so nothing else until the calendar turns. In terms of getting a little bit of a respite, it's the holiday season, travel involved, family involved, so we'll see how much of a break it actually ends
You
up
still
being.
can't
But
kick your
in terms
feet
of
up,
work
huh?
travel, yeah, in terms of work travel, there will be a little bit of a break. So, with that additional time, we're going to be trying to get more content up on the blog than we have sort of in the busy travel periods of this year. And in fact, I mentioned in the newsletter this month that a couple of those aspects that really there just wasn't space for in the newsletter, we try to keep it, a reasonable length for people to read, will be addressed in upcoming blog posts, and that will hopefully be up actually before this video even goes out. So viewers of this, be sure to check that out in the coming weeks, and over the next month or two, we'll have a lot of great content going up about, sort of 2023 and what to kind of look for in 2024.
Well, you can come check this out anytime that you want on our blog. It's alndata.com/blog. Also, keep an eye on our social media channels for more information about not just our articles that we put out, but also where we're going and what's happening with ALN. You can find us on X at twitter.com/ALN Data, or you can just search for ALN Apartment Data on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or Instagram. And don't forget to like or click the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our brand new content on YouTube. Jordan, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, have a great Thanksgiving.